Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Chloe and I'm a nutritionist and online coach. And today we are breaking down training, nutrition, and your menstrual cycle. Now, training and nutrition in general should not be a guessing game, but when you are a female and when your cycle is involved, even more so, the importance should be on understanding your cycle and working with it to feel empowered by that knowledge rather than against it and constantly frustrated month to month when those phases are changing. So we're going to get nitty gritty and help you really understand how to optimize each of those phases, what's going on in each of those phases, and those little tweaks that we can kind of make to training and nutrition to support your energy levels the best, support your performance the best as well, and just make sense of some of those things that happen in the background. So let's start at the top, right? There are 4 main phases to your cycle. You've got menstruation, your follicular phase, ovulation, and then your luteal phase. Now, through each phase of your cycle, your hormones are roller coastering at different levels throughout. So I want to break down some of the key players of your hormones that are kind of working through each phase and what their role kind of is for you. So the first one we have is estrogen. So the main role of estrogen is to help build up the uterine lining and help your eggs mature. She also helps boost your mood and energy. It also helps with things like bone health and skin health, as well as insulin sensitivity. We've then got something called progesterone. So this is the hormone that is responsible for preparing for the possibility of pregnancy. It helps the uterus along in that process. It's really calming and helpful to promote sleep, but it can also lead to a little bit of excessive water retention as well because it can slow digestion. The luteinizing hormone is the one that helps with that release of the egg. We've then got something called FSH, which is follicular stimulating hormone, and it helps the ovaries grow those little follicles. And the last one is testosterone, which is really small amounts in women. It's responsible for things like muscle growth, libido, and strength. Okay, so let's get clear on the different phases of your cycle and what exactly happens with your hormones during each of them. So we're gonna break down this little diagram here, which looks a little bit crazy at the moment, but the lines that you're looking at are basically the changes of those hormones ebbing and flowing through each phase. We're going to break down what exactly is going on here, how to optimize that training and nutrition best. So at the very start, day 1 of your cycle is day 1 of menstruation of your bleed. So this will, as you know, normally last for kind of anywhere from like the first 1 day up to 5 or 7 days roughly. Now, it is important to note as well, everything I'm speaking about today is based off an ideal cycle, so kind of a best case scenario, a regular cycle, and some things that can kind of impact that cycle and the regularity of it can be things like birth control, stress, PCOS, endometriosis, pregnancy. So just take these things into consideration if you do have any of those when I am speaking about these things. Your cycle can look a little bit varied to the kind of timelines that we're talking about today. So during menstruation, your estrogen levels start really low and then they kind of gradually begin to rise towards the back end of menstruation. Progesterone is also pretty low here just already. LH and FSH also slightly begin to rise here too. So it's important to note in terms of training during this phase that training might be impacted. It's very normal. You will find that some months your training will be more impacted than others. So it's not to say avoid weights altogether and avoid training altogether when you're on your menstrual cycle. It's just something to be aware of those cues and listening to your body when those things pop up. So it can be a time to lean into more rest and digest styles of movement. So things like slower controlled Pilates sessions, yoga sessions, reformer Pilates, generally avoiding any hot room environments though for Pilates or yoga and just doing it in kind of that regular environment because you will have a lower heat tolerance as well. So it's probably the time that you want to avoid saunas and avoid hot classes if you are going for that more slower style of movement. If you're training regularly and you are still weight training throughout, that's perfectly fine. I go through many cycles and don't have to adjust my training sessions or adjust days, but I do often adjust intensity. I'm a little bit gentler on myself. It's very likely that you will feel weaker, your sets will feel harder and heavier, and you will need longer rest in between. So just consider that during your sessions. Also consider on things like your glute days that your pelvis area and your uterus is obviously going to be more inflamed. You're going to be holding on to that little bit more water retention here as well. So something like a barbell hip thrust where that bar is sitting across your pelvis, not super ideal for that area when it's already inflamed. So switching to something like a single leg dumbbell hip thrust instead, placing it more on that quad / upper hip area, and switching out your barbell for that dumbbell variation can be a really good alternative. So yeah, it's more about being mindful of intensity here, and know that you may want to lean into switching that session, moving it to further along in the week, and opting for something like a longer walk outside, a yoga session, a Pilates session, and something more restorative, and adjusting your strength sessions, reshuffling them throughout the week. I would also avoid HIIT style training in this phase. To be honest, if you're a female, I would avoid excessive HIIT style training just in general in terms of your hormones, but in menstruation especially, I would avoid that HIIT style training. Sodium and water retention are obviously much higher in this phase as well. Your recovery is slightly lowered, and you will find that your hunger will increase as well due to that extra energy that your body is burning in menstruation. In terms of nutrition here, lower insulin sensitivity is pretty normal, so you will find that you'll have most likely higher carb cravings as well, which can then also lead to more water retention on top of that excessive inflammation as well. So just know that spikes on the scale around this phase are so normal, and I don't want you to freak out when you see that scale rise during this phase. It should rise, and often it can be a matter of a kilo plus. It can be quite considerable. And then as we work out of menstruation, that scale weight is going to come back down as that water retention comes back down also. In terms of nutrition, you want to really lean into antioxidant rich foods and healthy fat-based foods. So things like dark leafy greens, lots and lots of berries, fruit and veg in general, healthy fats like nuts and seeds, oily fish like salmon is really epic, nut butters, all of those richer style of foods where we can really lean into the healthy fats element of it, as well as then those antioxidant rich, really dark foods, which is kind of one of the reasons as well why you might all of a sudden get really intense cravings for something like dark chocolate. That is the antioxidants that your body is craving, specifically the magnesium quite often that you get from those foods. So that's why also in terms of nutrition, leaning into a magnesium supplement in the week leading up to your period, and then whilst you are on your period as well, can be really key to stay on top of those cravings and curb those hunger cues a little bit around that lack of magnesium. Around this phase as well, your body can also take on roughly an extra 150 calories per day on top of what you're currently eating, essentially without it really registering. And this is just due to that extra energy that your body is burning during this phase. So for example, if you're in a deficit phase, do not try and eat your deficit calories whilst you're on your menstrual cycle. Give yourself that extra 150 calories a day on top of your current calories. That will just allow you to, again, stay on top of those hunger cues, and you're not going to get to day 5 of your period and then start that whole binge cycle because you've been trying to restrict on the front end. During menstruation as well, obviously you are bleeding, you are losing iron, so really iron rich foods are really key here as well. Things like, again, those dark leafy greens, things like red meat, even cauliflower and broccoli are really high in iron as well. And if we compare these iron sources with a source of vitamin C, whether it is some lemon juice kind of squeezed onto your salad that you're having with your steak, that's an epic example. Whether it is an iron-rich meal that you're eating and you're having a glass of orange juice with it, having a kiwi fruit around the time of your meal as well, that vitamin C is going to help with that iron absorption as well for your body. We're now moving on to the follicular phase, which is roughly day kind of 8 to 16. During this phase, your hormones are most stable, I would say, out of anywhere throughout your cycle. So estrogen steadily rises during this phase, and it peaks right before ovulation. Progesterone remains pretty low, and then LH and FSH help that follicle to kind of start to mature. So LH surge comes at the very end of this phase, and that's to help start to trigger ovulation. In this phase, you should feel amazing. On the one hand, your period's just ended, so you're probably feeling absolutely amazing because of that, but also thanks to the way that those hormones are working, you should feel like you have way more energy in this phase to really crush your training and push within this window. This is the time that I would say start pushing for those PBs. Your recovery is also increased during this phase, so you can pull up a lot better from your training session. You should have more energy to really push and dig deep and go for longer, essentially, in those training phases. So if you want to really push in a week, this is your window to do so. During this phase, your hunger levels are going to start to dip as well in terms of nutrition, so they'll kind of start to level back out. Your carb tolerance is also better now. That water retention and inflammation is starting to decrease, and your hunger levels are kind of starting to level back out as well. So there's not too much you need to focus on in terms of the specifics of your nutrition in this phase, just going back to eating a balanced plate and fueling yourself as you kind of normally would, without thinking too consciously of any extra specifics like you would have been in your menstrual phase. Ovulation is up next, and this is a little tiny window of around day 16 to 18. So in this phase, estrogen starts to peak. It peaks to its highest point within the cycle. Progesterone is still pretty low, but it does start to increase slightly. LH will surge sharply to kind of start to trigger that ovulation as well here. So you've got those couple of days of peak ovulation, and when you are in kind of that little tiny window, you will feel even better than you just have been feeling in your follicular phase. So you've got this little window of ovulation, and this is the phase where it's like your follicular phase, but even 10 times better in terms of energy, recovery, and that capacity to really push for those PBs. Day 18 to 30 is now your luteal phase, so we are almost back at the start again. This is the phase just before your period, before menstruation. So during this phase, estrogen dips slightly, and then kind of mid-luteal phase, it'll start to rise again, and then it'll start to drop really sharp just before your period. Progesterone here will rise pretty significantly, and then mid-luteal phase, it'll be peaking at its highest. And then if no pregnancy occurs, it'll start to drop off again. During your luteal phase, your body is starting to work that little bit harder in the background. So you do start to have that increased energy expenditure. This is the phase where you will be feeling a little bit more fatigued. You might just feel like things are starting to slow down. You're feeling a little bit more sluggish, and your recovery will be starting to take a little bit of a hit here. This is of course the phase where PMS may start to kick in. You might start to feel a little bit less energetic, a little bit more bloated. Your body is going to start holding on to that little bit more water retention as well, which can, as a byproduct, alter that performance in terms of your training as well. So don't be surprised if, especially towards the back end of this phase, you need to start making some of those training adjustments that you would in menstruation. So you might have to back the weights off a little bit. You might not actually progressively overload that week. You might just maintain your weights. You might need longer in your rest to really recover. You might feel like your training is a little bit tougher. So just take those things into consideration with your training. Be mindful, be gentle on yourself that it's probably not the window where you're going to be smashing PBs. In terms of nutrition here, you do have that lower carb tolerance as well. So lowering carbs a little bit and increasing your healthy fats is a really good idea. So same healthy fats that you would start to prioritize around menstruation, you would be prioritizing here. So increasing the amount of things like nut butters, oily fish, nuts and seeds, extra virgin olive oil, all really supportive in this phase, and just bringing those carbs down ever so slightly. Again, making sure that we are dosing with magnesium in this phase as well as menstruation. The two types that you want to kind of go for, they're the same type, but they will be labeled differently. There's chelate or there's glycinate. These are best in powder form for absorption, and basically you just want to have the little serving size every single day during this phase and during menstruation. It's going to help lessen some of those symptoms. It's going to help stay on top of cravings and hunger cues as well. And that's it. That is your 101 overview of training, nutrition, and your menstrual cycle. Now, if you are a girly watching this and you are not currently tracking your cycle, please, please, please start doing so, especially if you do have a relatively regular cycle. It's going to help you bring awareness to each of these phases that you're in, and it's going to help make sense of some of the things you may be feeling in each phase, some of the things that you may be seeing or experiencing in each phase. It can kind of give you that validity of going, okay, I'm not crazy. This is because I'm whatever it might be in my luteal phase right now. That's why I want to eat the house down. It's not just because it's a lack of willpower. So please start tracking your cycle if you don't already. I will also leave linked down below my free blueprint, Soft to Sculpted. It is your 101 of taking you from plateauing and not seeing progress in the gym to understanding your body, your training and nutrition, to start building those glutes, shrinking your waist, increasing your strength, and actually start driving some incredible results. So if you would like to get a copy, grab it down below. If you would like some even further one-on-one support, this is exactly what I do inside of Refine with all of my clients, 100% personalized and tailored to you and your goals. If you want to chat about your goals and you want to chat about where you are and getting some more help, I will also leave my booking link down below so you can book a call in, we can have a chat about where you're at, and we can see where I might be able to help. That's all for today. I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.